Good afternoon. I know when you hear this program come on, you're used to saying my brother Gregory Roberts. I want you all to say a prayer for him. He's doing a little recovery today, but he has entrusted me to captain the ship this afternoon. So I want to welcome you to Torn in Two. I'm Melvin Burns, and I normally co-host the program with my brother Gregory Roberts. Today we are going to continue our discussion on trauma. If you listened to the program last week, we talked a little bit about the shooting in Texas, how it occupied our thoughts and our hearts and our prayers. And we thought we'd follow up this week. You know, a lot of us had opinions and thoughts about it, about guns, about the shooting, about the activity and inactivity of police. But we can narrow a lot of that down to trauma. And so rather than me bloviate about it, we brought an expert on. So I want you to, as my brother Greg would always say, I want you to put your hands together as we welcome our guest to the show this afternoon, Mr. Lewis Churchwell. How are you this afternoon?
I'm blessed, uh, brother Melvin, and highly favored. Thanks
All right.
for thanks for asking.
Amen. I think a lot of our audience may know you, Lewis, but just give folks a little bit of background of who you are and what qualifies you to talk about this topic this afternoon.
Well, I'm the past CEO uh, of West Michigan Therapy Incorporated. Did that for nearly 30 years. All the while being a therapist uh, while I was in that capacity. Uh, I'm currently a master's level clinician with Health West.
Okay.
I hold two master's degrees, one in behavior science and addiction studies. The other one is in professional counseling. Um, I've dedicated pretty much my life to working with people and helping people. So I had the spiritual side down packed because
Okay.
I was, like many of you, my mother and father raised me in church.
Yes.
But I wanted to get the secular part. And
Yes.
that's what steered me to get the education that I got. So I can understand it when I'm working with a person. I can understand them from a psychological perspective as well as a spiritual perspective and sociological perspective.
Yes.
And so that's who a little bit about who I am, and that's what pretty much qualifies me. But the real qualifier is my life experience.
Okay.
And this topic that we're talking about today, I've been traumatized.
Okay. All right. And we'll get into that. But
Yes,
we're
sir.
more than appreciative to have you join us, and certainly you're more than qualified to share with us on this topic. Again, you're aware of the shooting. I forget the exact date that it took place down in Texas, and with your expertise and your experience, both personally and professionally, you probably you see it, you analyze it in a different way. Okay, I think we have Brother Scott joining us also.
Okay.
Okay, Cedric Scott, how are you, my brother?
Doing well. Sorry about the delay. I left myself out of the box here somehow. I'm
Okay.
blaming on
Well,
my lack of technical skills.
okay, well, it's good to have you with us. Why don't you briefly introduce yourself to our audience, and we're going to jump into our topic here this afternoon.
Sure. Cedric Scott. I'm the executive director of Lazarus Band Consulting, Community Counseling Center here in Muskegon Heights.
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
also a limited license psychologist.
Okay, thank you.
Hey,
And
hello, brother Scott.
Hey, big doctor.
I call him Big Dog. All right.
okay, let's get to business. So we get to reunion with everybody. I'm honored to have both you brothers on here with me this afternoon, and I'm sure our audience are really going to be enlightened. But as you well, a few weeks ago, we watched in horror as we and the news are coming across. We don't know how many. We find out a gunman yet again goes into a school, shoots students, shoots teachers. Um, we watch it unfold again. God, I don't know how many times we've seen it now, but we had a discussion last week, and so we thought we'd bring some professionals on to help us talk about this. Let's talk about the trauma. As you're trained to professionalize our watchers, are watching it unfold. Talk to us a little bit about the trauma that those students are experiencing, those families are experiencing those type of incidents, and what kind of things that will need to be done to help them in the coming future. Brother Churchwell, why don't you start us off here?
Okay, I think first of all we want to make sure that uh, everybody in the listening audience is aware of what trauma what trauma is, and trauma is an emotional response to a very terrible event or accident, such as a rape, a natural disaster, or the same thing that happened with the mass shooting that we've seen with these youth getting killed, and it causes a, a lot of reactions that include unpredictable emotions, flashbacks. It even causes physical symptoms such as headaches, nausea, chronic pain, and it does a lot of those different things within the individual. And there is basically three types of trauma, that when you deal with trauma, and you deal with it on acute trauma. That's from a single event, exposure, something happening that's overwhelming, a rape, a death, a natural disaster. Uh, and the characteristics of that are derailed memories and and omens and hypervigilance and that sort of stuff. And then you got the chronic trauma, is results from somebody experiencing prolonged traumas, somebody involved in a very abusive marriage or battered relationship, bullying, profound neglect, and the
Okay.
characteristic of that is denial, numbing, dissociation,
Okay.
and then we have the trauma that these kids are struggling with. And I'm sure as a brother Scott is he's probably dealing with a lot of it, and that's complex trauma. And complex trauma uh, that happens from a single event that causes youth to be set up for a lifetime of their life being readjusted. And the, the the characteristics of this trauma are very perpetual mourning or depression, chronic pain, concentration problems, sleep disturbances, irritability. And then when you talk about the family members of these youth, this type of trauma, sets the family up to be traumatized. You
Hmm.
see one thing that we don't talk about a lot in our community, and which will show you, if you look at our community at large, mostly everybody right now in America is dealing with some sort of trauma.
Is that
Uh,
right?
for example, you get some of these youth that's been traumatized, the parents can become traumatized off of the youth's trauma. And that's how this thing really gets out of control. And
Okay.
then who they associate with, their life can turn around and be readjusted or maladjusted because they're trying to cope with their trauma from the trauma that they're dealing with from the trauma of these kids. So we need to reach these kids real quick. They
Okay.
need to offer these kids the professional services of somebody very quick so they can help them learn how to de-escalate
Okay.
and help parents learn how to de-escalate issues with these youth, as they're going through them. And that's just a real quick overview, but we have to keep in mind that it's really important when we're dealing with kids that and family members that are traumatized. You don't want to ask them what's wrong with them or what's
Okay.
wrong with you. You want to ask them what happened to you, and not what's wrong with you.
Okay.
That's one of the things that a lot of family members don't understand.
The last
Okay.
piece of what Mr. Churchill was describing there when he said complex trauma, another element of that complex trauma you may add is a legacy of trauma.
Yeah,
He mentioned that the child affecting the parent, vice versa, parent affecting the child. And in both scenarios, yes, you want to know what happened because
Okay.
in all children, they think they're the problem. They
Okay.
think their existence at times is merely a problem for that family member
Hmm.
versus the problem coming from the outside and
Mm,
altering their way of thinking. What
okay.
I'm experiencing with the children that I am working with from day to day is the overarching legacy of trauma. It
Okay.
has been passed on to them from generations. Our community that we're experiencing now is a major giver, if you will, of that trauma, comprised of the people or incidents that's occurring, the shootings, the deaths, the
Mm-hmm.
mayhem, the chaos, being caused by a myriad of different entities, uh,
Okay.
and exacerbated by the use of media and social uh, prolonged videotapes, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not either or today. I tell you, folks, it's a complex issue, and it's something that we're going to be grappling with from all ends
Okay.
for some time to come.
Yes, sir.
Well, got a comment from Michael Anthony Smith. Says, "Okay, let me give you a softball." Uh, Daddy said, "Get your butt up and get it together, or I'm gonna get my belt." So I think he's referring to the fact that maybe events even when we were maybe younger that we didn't recognize these things, and um, you know, yeah, you got to do it. Like you said earlier, why don't you want to go to school? That
Right.
happened. You know, school will come around in September again. They cancel school. Um, Time to go to school. I don't care. Yeah, that happened back in May.
Hmm.
And some parents, not recognizing may say, "Hey, no, that was 3 months ago. It's time to go to school."
Now, I could appreciate uh, Brother Keeb's encouraging words, and we've all in our generation experienced our family because, or here we go with that legacy of trauma, but
Hmm.
they were working out of a paradigm of survival
Okay.
that they needed to continue to progress to survive. They what trauma was put on them, uh, albeit racism, discriminations, prejudices, the lack the lack of resources, et cetera, et cetera. So their formula, by the grace of God, and I thank Him for it, and that all of that, their formula is what allow us to continue to exist today, us 30 and over guys. Uh, so
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so I appreciate that formula. I really do. But
Yes.
when you know better, you're indicted to do better.
Yeah.
Yes.
For
Yes.
those of us who got up and went on outside and did what they asked us to do and explored and overcame those obstacles and educated ourselves to a better degree that
Hmm.
we can be a more asset to our community and family, then we have it's our responsibility to learn better skills and techniques to address the trauma that's been placed on us and to overcome it. And so that's partly why Lewis is still working today, and so myself, because to some degree our life experiences have allowed us to be able to understand what has happened to us, and some of it we done to ourselves, but being able to delineate between the two, and at the same time
Hmm.
uh, use the experiences, skills, and techniques, education that we've acquired to progress through the traumatic experiences and gain more insight from other information and research that's coming out each and every day about dealing with trauma. So I appreciate that statement, Keith, but
Hmm.
the way we encourage them now has to be a little different. The apple has to be a little different. The
Okay.
stick has to be a little different in more of an encouraging and understanding manner, if you
Okay.
understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. Well, let me
Now,
ask a question. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lewis.
now, adding and balancing off what Brother Scott said. You know, sometimes kids will display behaviors and attitudes that can really annoy us real bad,
Yes.
as of the one that don't want to get up,
Uh huh.
get out of bed. Not all the time is that attitude or that behavior that that kid is giving us is stemming from the ability stemming from the fact that they don't just want to get out of bed. You got to go beyond that in some cases today, if that's happening, because it could be they're not getting out of bed because they're getting bullied at school.
Okay.
It could be they're not getting out of bed because they're afraid of what's happening to them at school. And if they don't have a relationship where they feel comfortable enough to talk to you about what's going on in their life, they'll take the punishment, of the belt and be further traumatized unless you're able to communicate with them openly. So if they're not getting up, you need to find out what's wrong with you. Is there a reason that you're not doing this?
Okay.
It could be as simple as getting teased and bullied in school over being not smart as the other kids. So we have to make sure that line of communication is open and offer them the opportunity, to de-escalate whatever they're going through, and help them move beyond, like Brother Cedric says, different way to deal with the apple, help them move beyond that belt and not getting up. We had it, and some of us, like Brother Scott said, it was survival. We went ahead and we moved on. But there were many of us that fell through the cracks as well.
Okay.
Who got traumatized.
Yeah.
Not because they didn't want to go to school, because what was at school.
Okay. Yeah. So tell me this. So we hear these incidents, and we always hear the schools bringing in counselors for the students and the family. But, there's people watching this all over the country. Students in all kind of schools are watching these same events. What should other school districts, maybe they're thinking, well, this won't happen here. We got guards, we got security, we got dogs, we got everything. But what should every school be doing or for their students when these incidents happen?
Brother Burns, we're on a very slippery slope right now, America.
Okay.
And one of the reasons being is that social media brings a whole different aspect to the ball game. Now, before, when we were young, a lot of events similar to this have taken place, but social media and even the news coverage didn't have, the arms and legs that they have now to reach certain areas.
Okay.
So social media helps traumatize other communities with the news and the different things that they're bringing.
Okay.
It brings to the mind and to the surface of the mind that this is something that you need to be aware of, and that traumatizes us more. Basically what I'm saying, and the psychologists down there could bear with me, verify this. America itself is suffering from, and here's the word, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay.
We've all, in some degree, been traumatized because of now the fears and the different things that we have. And what we're trying to do to prevent this from happening to us occupies some of our minds and our thoughts. And we don't want to send our kids to school no more. We don't want to do these things.
Okay. Well, just take the pandemic.
Yeah.
Take the pandemic, how it pushed us back into the homes. Yes. How it gave us such a great level of uncertainty. People dying like flies, and you were afraid that you were next. Millions of people have died from the pandemic in this country alone, and we've all lost friends and loved ones from it. That put a certain level of fear and trauma in our mindsets, and distrust for others, and worry about getting close to things, touching things. So to a large degree, it is widespread. But what we're failing to do is address this trauma in a meaningful way. We have such divide on the information and the certainty of the science and other healing factors that we can't agree on whether it's daylight outside sometime. And it's clearly daytime. But if that doesn't change, the trauma doesn't change. As it go even a little further, you got over 300 million people in the United States, and the social media was designed for communication and a tool to improve our communications and our understanding of the world today. But it's been hijacked and used in a manner that debilitates us in our world today.
Yes, sir.
By revisiting chaotic or catastrophic events in the sense, like you're saying, Lewis, now traumatizing us over and over again
Yes,
Wow.
sir.
for the
Okay.
sake of pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
joy, and entertainment.
Okay.
And put that into an adolescent mind, which prefrontal cortex hasn't developed and doesn't have the executive function and skills to understand and process the things that they're seeing on this media, and think about how they're supposed to develop or deal with that from day to day. More than half of
Mm-hmm.
your fights, arguments, and chaos inside your schools and the community always stem from what? Media.
Okay.
He said, she said on the social media.
So
But yet we don't have the right to curtail that. It's deemed removing us of our fundamental rights and freedom of
mhm.
speech,
Yes, sir.
even during an hour of school,
Wow.
which is outrageous,
Yeah. So
completely outrageous.
we
But
think we understand what it's doing, but it sounds like you're saying that with it, it's doing way more than we think it's doing, having way more
absolutely.
effect than we want to acknowledge.
No
And
question.
now, I have a board simultaneously going on right here with the American Psychological Association, and it's addressing and it's doing the studies of that, and it's showing you clearly what's happening. But yet, we have 30% of the country will deny it
Mm.
hand and foot, will deny it
The
uh,
the minute it's said, no
completely,
matter what science
no
is.
matter what. And this is science
Yeah.
being tested and proven through psychometric instruments and a scientific process of
Mm-hmm.
standardizing information that's used
Mm-hmm.
by
Mhm.
very well trained psychologists and researchers.
Sure.
But yet it's not true. It's fake news.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's fake news. And so until that change, until that we have a conceptual or shift of concepts, then we're get along for the long ride here.
Yeah.
All you can do is what you're doing now by putting out as much information as you can, but whatever means you have to educate others and enlighten others and help them to make a more sound decision about how we're going to pursue or proceed with our media and understanding of the trauma that is delving out for everyone from day to
Okay.
day.
Good.
Does that make sense to you at all?
Yes, sir. Yes, it
No.
does. It does. And
Yes, sir.
we say it and we see pieces of it, but again, I think we don't understand the impact. Well, we say put that video game down or put that phone down, and we don't realize everything that it's doing. Like
No,
that point you made about seeing these shootings or seeing the kid covered in blood, not once, over and over and over. And then
so,
one person you mentioned,
absolutely.
next
So
person you
that
said is so important.
desensitizes them, Brother Burns.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at a kid shows me a rap video he's watching, and they're talking about popping his top.
Yeah.
No, how many of you know what that means? Popping his top.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about blowing someone's head
Yeah.
off
Mm-hmm.
with a chopper. We listen to these terms.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying it such nonchalantly. And when so then I say, hey, well, what about you? What are you going to be doing while they're shooting back at you? Will it pop your chop if they won't get me first? You hear the adolescent mind.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have the executive function to really process and understand that, hey, while you're shooting at them, they're going to be shooting at you. Hello? He's
Yeah.
not thinking that far ahead. He
Okay.
doesn't have the cortex developed
Oh.
well enough to make that executive decision. But now, and also let's add that he had no leadership
Okay.
inside his home
Okay.
up to this point. I'm it. I'm the first person who's ever dared, who had the audacity
Mm.
to confront these erroneous lines of thinking.
Okay.
So now he's had 15, 16 years to compound these erroneous thoughts. 15, 16 years of trauma, poor representation, poor leadership. And I'm just naming one person, but
Yeah.
I bet you $1,000 to your $1 bill today that I can pull you 100 of those in before sunset today.
Wow.
That thinks the same way.
Wow.
So you want to know why our communities are under fire?
Okay.
Why is there shooting every single time they get together, 10 or more of them? Why?
So do you lead me to the next point? I want you set up my next question really well, which is we watch these shootings, these mass shootings, this school district, but we know in our own community, every school year, our kids in high school witness the death of a couple of classmates, kids they grew up with. Is that any different than the mass shootings in terms of the effects it's having on our young people?
Well, it just, in my opinion, it just kind of puts a stamp on what they're thinking. Yeah, see, we're not the only one doing it. It's all over. This is the way we handle things. See, you look at it, happened down in Texas. It happened over here in New York. See, this is what we do it. We roll, Cedric. This is what we doing, man. This is
Okay.
what I'm hearing. You know,
Yeah.
what you talking about might have been the way it was when you would come through, but it ain't like that no more. As if that's our culture.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the
Yes.
culture of people who look like me and you,
Mm-hmm.
which you and I are standing here saying, "Oh no, that's not. That's a subculture. That's a
Mm-hmm.
subculture in a group, a small group of people thinking this way." Is it?
Yeah,
Is it?
and yeah,
Bruce?
and Brother Melvin, and it goes back to when I brought up, complex trauma. Uh, Trauma is trauma,
Okay.
and for the people that are involved in the the student or the kid being with his friend and his friend getting shot, the trauma that he's going to experience and take home to his parents. Individually, that's the same type of trauma that you deal with the families who are losing kids uh, down there in Texas and the different things. The trauma is trauma, and it's going to manifest itself uh, with those individual children. The way it's going to manifest itself. The key is finding someone who is very capable and aware of trauma informed care. You treat trauma by someone who understands what trauma informed care is
Okay.
and how to use that particular technique, and that's a framework of thinking and intervening that is directed by a thorough understanding of the profound neurological, biological is what neurological is what Brother Scott is talking about, uh, psychological and social effects that trauma has on individuals uh, and their independent needs for safety and whatnot. And so that's what it boils down to. That trauma with that family who lost the kid, and then the trauma to that family of the boy who did the shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Both are traumatized. Two young people lost their lives, one of them through death, the
Mm-hmm.
other one through the penal system or wherever he's going to go. Two families lost their son, one through death, one through the penal system. But the trauma from that, if you don't deal with it, it's going to carry over into another form of trauma, which can become chronic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we are today. People need to understand mental health counseling, it works.
Okay.
And people need to utilize Brother Scott. We only got one of him in Muskegon County. That's a psychologist. Need to utilize those individuals who are clinicians and understand your language, talk like you, walk like you,
Mm-hmm.
and then come in and let them help you through trauma informed care. Learn how to de escalate the trauma you're feeling. Because when you're feeling all of that tension,
Okay.
the nausea, the headaches, your body shutting down, your mind shutting down, there's de escalation points that a person can reach that can help them. But sometimes we need people who understand how to get there, take you there.
Yes.
Then you can start doing some of those things on your own.
Truth.
Okay. Brothers, we have just a couple minutes left. Taking us back to, we talked about the shootings in Texas and other school shootings. What are some things parents, grandparents, guardians, what are some things they can do and should be looking out for to watch over their children, because their mental health, dealing with this trauma? What are some things they should be doing, looking for in the next coming weeks and months?
Well, you need to find somebody in your community if you just like you, like we were talking about, uh, uh, and get into some counseling. You don't want to, help them become more paralyzed because you don't want them to stop living or experiencing life. Because if they stop living and stop experiencing life, it's just going to exacerbate what they're dealing with further. So get them into some mental health counseling, get them in front of a professional who can help you and them understand. You have to get therapy and education. The family got to get educated while this kid is getting therapy. And in some cases, they both end up getting therapy and educated.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times what you're referring to as therapy is oftentimes turns into a large-scale educational process, both family and patient. I think this should have occurred with the restart of schools, quite frankly, after that major traumatic event of the pandemic. But since it didn't, and we're here now, I think now we have to refocus our thoughts on what's healthy and what's unhealthy. Is living a life filled with trauma and traumatic experiences a healthy life experience? We can't continue on in the manner that we are with gunshots and shootings every day, and murder lurking around the corner, fear of murder at the least around the corner every day. That's not a healthy life. And so there has to be a reset. And so who's going to draw the line in the sand and say, well, just this is all, we're not taking it anymore. We're going to do something different. We're going to demand it of our schools. We're going to demand it of our government to provide the resources necessary for the community counseling centers of every gender, race, color. You're just not trying to continue to monopolize and center all the resources and dictate how they be dispersed, so that there is more of a free flow, free choice for these individuals to seek help and counseling in the community. That has to occur. But we, the people, have to decide that we're going to demand it.
To our listening audience, you've heard two well-trained professionals, and not just professionals, but they've lived in this community or part of this community. I hope you've been listening and gained some knowledge and information. If you have some questions, Brother Churchwell, how can people get in touch with you if they have questions after today?
Well, they can get in touch with me. I'm here at Health West. My direct number is 231-724-4540. My cell number is 231-670-5780.
Thank you. Brother Scott, if folks are interested in your services or want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Lazarus Man Consulting, we're located at 2416 Peck Street. My phone number is 231-747-6197. That's the front office phone there. And you can also reach me by cell, 231-740-2401.
Brothers, I want to thank you for joining us today. We're going to have to get together where we aren't constrained by time and just kick it a little bit. But I appreciate you all coming on, sharing your knowledge, expertise, and your care
Thanks for having
our
us.
community.
Thanks for having us, man.
Thank you so much. Take care now.
Take care.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have really locked in and heard just some outstanding information, knowledge that's been shared with us on Torn Into this afternoon. But we're not done. We're not done. I believe we're going to shift gears here. I want you to welcome to the program my friend for many years, a beautiful, knowledgeable, well-informed woman here in Muskegon, Miss Karen Buie Jenkins.
Hi, Melvin. How are you?
I'm wonderful, my friend. How are you?
I'm fine. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Always wonderful to see you. Let me first say happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I'm not in that club yet. 2 more weeks, I'll be in the club.
I know we're going to have a celebration for you, too.
But it's always good to see you.
Thank you.
Yes. Now, I understand you have some news, updates, and information for us today.
Well, yes. With the upcoming primary election, I've been made aware that there are numerous candidates that are unable to be placed on the ballot due to their affidavit of candidacy apparently not being filled out correctly or having minor errors. And so the county clerk has made the decision to not allow these individuals on the ballot. As of now, I know there's Charles Nash, who's our county commissioner, running for
Okay.
reelection.
Okay.
Susie Hughes, who's running for the same district as Mr. Nash, Commissioner Nash, and also Andre Williams.
Okay.
And from my understanding, there's some Republican candidates too. I haven't been able to acquire their names yet. And so, what that does is those individuals who have already began campaigning now cannot legally campaign and have to, they can't fundraise because they're not legally on the ballot, and they will have to start a pretty much groundwork campaign to ensure that individuals know to write their names in on the ballot.
Okay, I got questions. Okay, so
Mhm.
walk people through this process. So there was a date when you have to file, and these are all county commission positions we're talking about. There's a date they had to file a petition saying they were going to run, right?
Right. It's an affidavit of candidacy that
Okay,
they have to file.
and
Yes.
that's submitted to the county clerk.
It's submitted to the county clerk, and I can only speak from when I was the county clerk.
Okay.
My elections clerk, who was Kim Grimm at the time, who was the maverick of elections, she would ensure that the individuals, as they're handing in their paperwork, she would literally sit there with them and go line by line, and it's not really complicated, line by line, and making sure that they've checked all the boxes and crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. Because it has the county clerk's information on there, so you want to ensure that it's the spirit of integrity and it's done properly. If by chance there may have been someone or an oversight she didn't see, she would always call that person back in, have them corrected, because our philosophy was that if you have the willingness to serve, it doesn't matter what party you're with or who you're affiliated with. You're using your own strengths and talents to give back to this community, and it's important that anyone that wants to enter the political arena has a fair and just opportunity to do so.
Okay. And so it's not uncommon for a candidate to come in, maybe have some deficiencies on the affidavit to say, hey, check this. It's not it's not like a sealed bid or anything.
No. And so, it's similar to a marriage license. You come in, you fill out your marriage license. If it's not, filled out correctly, are you not married? Same scenario.
Yeah. Okay.
Same scenario, because that's the elections official's job, whether it be your elections clerk or the county clerk. Ultimately, it falls on the county clerk because you're there to ensure that everything is totally correct.
Okay, I'm Joe Blow runner. I'm thinking I walk in and say, hey, here's my affidavit. Does this look okay? I mean, am I allowed to say that to the clerk or the?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, let me share this with you. And with Andre Williams, he did just that. He filled out his information at the clerk's office, submitted it.
Okay.
The clerk at the time, who's now fired.
Okay, we'll circle back around to that, but okay.
Looked it over and said it was correct.
Okay.
He leaves. A day or so later, he gets a phone call. You missed, I don't know, a date or something. He goes back down there, fills in whatever information they said that needed to be filled, and he again asked, now, is everything correct? Yes, everything's fine. No worries. He goes, comes and gets home, gets a call later on from the county clerk, Nancy Waters, and says, I need you to be down at my office by, say, 1:00. I'm not sure what time it was, but so he goes down, he walks in, she asked him, how's your campaign going? And he said, oh, it's going really well. We're doing a lot of good things in the community, da, da, da. And she said, well, you're not on the ballot.
Wow.
Period. And he's like, well, how is that when I've submitted my information? Your clerk looked it over. Everything was fine. And I think his issue was he didn't check the box that said Democrat. However, if you look at the county clerk's website, he's listed as a Democrat.
So It got put on the county clerk's website, running because the county commission seats are partisan, as a Democrat running for that's first, I thought, whatever district seat as a Democrat.
Yes.
But the box
Yeah.
was not checked on his affidavit.
Right. But on the website, which is an official website, it says Andre Williams, Democrat, Charles Nash, Democrat, Susie Hughes, Democrat.
So I'm gonna ask you a question that you don't know the answer to. So then where did he get the information to put those people on the website? Where did that information come from?
That's my question too. And also, let's circle back around. Say the information wasn't correct the second time. There's a window of opportunity to call that. You've called him twice before. Call those people back and say, look, we're reviewing your forms. If you want to be on this ballot, you need to come in and make sure that everything on here is correct.
Yes.
They didn't do that. So that tells me that it's incompetent. You didn't either review it correctly and the deadline passed. And now we're where we are now with these individuals not being able to be on the ballot, and I understand the law. I was a county clerk, so I understand the law. The law says that the candidate shall fill out the information correctly.
Yes.
But there's also something called the spirit of the law.
Yes.
And as a servant to this community, as the county clerk, it is your job to ensure that this election runs flawlessly from beginning to end, and to put people in this precarious position. It's unfathomable to me. I just can't conceptualize what's going on really right now. And Commissioner Nash and candidate Williams have elicited counsel. Okay. So they have gotten their counsel because they can be put back on the ballot. This is a county issue.
Okay. So this is not something where we're going to I shouldn't say, this is not a state issue. This is county rules that we're talking about here.
Absolutely. Well,
States got their own issues right now. But.
Yes, they got their own issues, but it can be. And, honestly, I can't even, I'm having trouble processing this because we just didn't operate like that. I have a hard time understanding how you would allow that to happen. I mean, that's the most traumatic thing that could happen to someone that's seeking political office.
Yeah, and you make a good point as you were talking, Karen. I was thinking, most people have never run for public office or even really been right there in a campaign, and they don't understand it's the best and worst, one of the best and worst experiences you can have.
Yes.
And your odds of getting elected when you're not on a ballot, they decrease like 90-something%.
Yes.
So it's not a small thing, I don't know your report is, but it's not a small thing to not be on a ballot. Writing candidates have really are at a really big disadvantage.
Well, yeah, because the average voter is not looking to write in names. They're looking for their names to be on the ballot so they can make their informed decision on who they want to vote for. Mm-hmm. But to have to take that extra step to write in that person's name, and after they write the name in, it can be questioned at the time of tabulation. Yeah. Because if it's misspelled or it's a different phonics, I don't know. There's different reasons.
My name's Melvin Burns II. Mm-hmm. What I put as my candidate name, I was supposed to say I'm Melvin Burns or Melvin Burns II or Melvin C. Burns. So it could matter what name, somebody puts Mel instead of Melvin.
Right.
Or Burns instead of second. I mean, it seems that's who they're voting for, but that could be, it could be, in this day and age, could be contested.
It could be contested. It's open to criticism. It really is. And as we all do, that these upcoming elections are going to be so contentious. Yes. They're doing so many things to try to hinder the voting process, disenfranchisement of certain communities. Yes. So this is the last thing we needed. And I'm just personally offended. As being the county clerk before, I took elections very seriously,
Yeah.
and we ran flawless elections. And it's not easy, but it takes a lot of, you have to be very focused and making sure that everything is done correctly because you're dealing with people's lives. You're dealing with the lives of the community. I mean, it's serious.
Okay. So now, Karen, you said the clerk, and again, there's the county clerk, for people to understand. There's an elected county clerk, and then she
Yes.
has, are they called deputy clerks? Is that their formal title, or
Um,
clerks under her?
we called him election. Kim Grimm was my elections clerk.
Okay.
Yes. And she solely did, she was solely responsible for running the elections. When we began, and during my tenure, it was paper ballots, and we moved to the electronic voting machines because I was part of that process of deciding what voting machines we would go with.
Yeah.
And so Kim pretty much wrote the process for Muskegon County. She knew it inside and out. And so, yeah, we never experienced anything like that. And it's because she was so diligent about ensuring that everything was correctly done, be it the ballots. We've had to rerun ballots, send them back to the printer because they weren't right. They had a misspelling of a name. It's a lot to this process.
Okay. And so we know that this clerk who's responsible for one or more of these incidents has been terminated.
Yes.
Okay. Has the county clerk made any kind of public statements or public comments about this?
No, I haven't heard anything.
Okay. So it's just mostly people. I don't know what about, but as people are involved in the election, certainly the candidates are
Candidates, yes.
saying something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and hopefully they will come on the air and speak on their own behalf because it's unconscionable to me. I just don't understand how this happened.
Wow. Yeah, and so there's a number of candidates. So this story is really kind of unfolded as we're speaking now. You said
Yes.
they sought legal counsel.
They retained legal counsel. From my understanding, corporate counsel from the county was brought in by Zach Laring to address this issue.
Okay.
And so his stance was, this is the law. This is the letter of the law.
Okay.
So it's going to be interesting. I talked with Marion Harris Darnell, who happens to be the campaign manager for Andre Williams, and she was very adamant about this will be a dogfight, and they're not going to take this. They're going to do everything humanly possible to ensure that their names are returned to the ballot.
Wow. And I think even the candidates you mentioned are all in contested primaries coming up in August, right?
They are. And the thing is, when you stop to think about the whole scenario, these are individuals that would represent the Black community.
Yes.
So if they don't end up in their, and nothing's guaranteed, but at least there would be representation.
There's some food for conspiracy theorists, but we'll leave that for another day. And so,
I'm leaning that way right now. I'm leaning
not like a good conspiracy on a Friday evening. So they're legally have been determined to not be candidates.
Right. So, at this moment, unless something changes, unless Clerk Waters changes her mind.
So no fundraisers, no events until you're determined to be a candidate. You aren't supposed to do any of that.
Right.
Wow. I'm supposed to be live radio. I'm just like, I'm stunned. Like I want to say something engaging, entertaining, but I'm stunned. I mean,
I know. It's just, I literally have just been almost lost sleep over this because it's just so.
Yeah, you're not even the one working there, but just the idea of this happening to kind of.
Just the idea, especially when you've been engaged in that for so long.
Yes.
It's just inconceivable. And, we're already, well, I shouldn't say we, I'm not the county clerk anymore, but the elections officials are still being watched closely.
Oh, God, yes.
And so there is no room for any kind of malfeasance or anything that doesn't appear to be right. And And so we don't need this trauma right now before the election even starts.
Yeah.
So I just hope and pray that this can be resolved quickly
Yeah.
and correctly.
Yeah. I think, having been a public servant, I just, like I have, sometimes when incidents happen that have nothing to do with you, you just sort of get that feeling in your stomach like, oh man,
Yeah.
just, it had nothing to do with you, but you just go, wow, I hate that happened.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it's disheartening.
yeah,
And then we lost the clerk in the Heights. She's
yes,
retiring,
yeah,
Sharon.
that's my understanding.
So yeah, who was phenomenal. I loved working with her. She
Yeah.
was excellent.
She started way back when I was there.
Yes,
Yeah.
she's phenomenal. So yeah,
Yeah.
this is like this upcoming election is too important to have any issues before we even get started.
Wow. Okay. Well, you came and dropped a bomb right in the middle of this program, Karen. I don't know.
Well, I just think it's just so important, and we have to ensure that we have candidates that represent the
Yeah.
entire community, and I think it's very important. So I have no idea how this is going to play out.
The expectation again, when we do this all the time. We do a housing application or a bank application or a loan
Yeah,
application. We say, okay, we hand it to them and say, is there anything else you need?
right,
Because I mean, you don't fill an application for anything and say, I'm gonna drop off and leave it. Okay, does this look okay? They look it over.
right,
No, you need this, or that just seems the normal thing to do. And we're talking about all these people who are not. This is not their first time running for public office.
exactly.
So
But
they know there's a process, and they understand. You can say,
yeah,
Mr. Williams, Pastor Williams, asked the question.
right,
And then when they call you and want your last name will be, well, now is everything okay?
right. And then the question is, why did she get fired then if she did everything right?
Okay. Well, let me ask you another question. So, if you call me in once to correct some deficiencies,
Hmm.
why am I still not on the ballot?
I don't get it. I don't understand.
Again, I'm asking you questions I know you can't answer. But if you call me in, I'm thinking you called me in to correct my affidavit,
Affidavit, yes.
and then it's not corrected.
So I'm at a loss. I don't understand what happened. It's just I have one word: incompetence.
Wow. I mean, the person was fired, who I guess was identified as responsible. There's usually a clerk in there who's sole responsible as elections.
Yes,
So that's the person that was terminated.
right. But
Um,
it's still the responsibility of the county clerk.
exactly.
Everything stops with the county clerk. I
Exactly.
mean,
Yeah.
it just does. And yeah, Melvin, I don't know this one's got me just baffled. It just got me
Well,
baffled.
I would hope that the clerk is going to make some type of statement or press release, or maybe she's been encouraged by counsel not to. But I would think, as this story starts to get out in the community and more people hear it, people hearing it today, that there'll be some kind of statement made. I know
Well,
you got
yeah,
candidates
absolutely.
out there.
There should be. It's the only right thing to do. Explain to the community that you owe it to the voters to let them know what's transpiring, because a lot of people are going to walk into that voting booth and expect to see these candidates on there.
Yeah.
How
Well,
are they to know that they're not on there?
Yeah, well, this is June, and again, these are, case of Mr. Nash and Susie Hughes, two sitting commissioners, now
Right.
contending for a seat. They got a lot of campaigning to do. They got 2 months.
2 months, and the ballots probably go to print sometime in latter part of June, July.
Yeah. Well, we even talk about that, but I mean, people understand they don't print the ballots the day before. There's a deadline.
Right. There's a deadline.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Because they have to get printed, then they send them back to the county clerk or the elections clerk to review and make sure all the names are correct and everything looks right. They do the practice tabulation running. There's a process.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh, Karen, I'm supposed to look at my time.
Oh,
That's what it's two of us. Hey, thank you so much for coming on and
absolutely.
informing us, dropping this bomb right here on us today. But we say we're a show that tries to inform people, and
Right.
you've done that. This is a big issue. It certainly matters to the candidates, and it matters to the people in the community who are probably looking at candidates, maybe made up their mind, trying to decide who. It makes a difference
It
uh,
does.
who's on those ballots. So I want to thank you for
You're
taking the
welcome.
time to join us today in the midst of your celebration week. Uh, and certainly, if we get some more updates, please keep us informed. Okay.
I sure will. Thank you,
All
Melvin.
right.
It's
Okay.
always a
Thank you.
pleasure.
All right. You take care now.
Okay. Bye bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining the program today. Gosh, just you need a tablet and a pen when you listen to this program from now on. Thank you to my brother Greg Roberts for allowing me to steer the ship today. Um, it's a wonderful summer weekend. Go out, do something good, bless somebody. Take care.